Hello friends, it's me, and today let's watch William is Actually Innocent from the Game Series. Together, let's go, let's start. Thank you.
I see the concept of a Fazbear conspiracy caught your interest. Can't say I blame you. You're a theorist. Video game conspiracies are literally what we do best. And this connection between these characters immediately seems suspicious. It couldn't just be a coincidence, right? Oh no, my friends. This rabbit hole is big. Big enough to fit every iteration of William Afton we've had throughout the years. No, not you. Get out of here. Honestly, why do you even exist? What I'm trying to say is that a coincidence implies this kind of similarity has only happened once. However, thanks to Secret of the Mimic, we've actually got a bunch of quote-unquote coincidences between the original set of games and the new lore we've learnt about from this new game. Just look at one of the other important Murrays, Edwin. He is a brilliant robotics engineer whose life is defined by two things: his incredible world-changing inventions and the soul-crushing loss of his wife and son. He's a genius haunted by tragedy, whose own creations ultimately become twisted into something monstrous and turn against him, killing both him and his son. Now, flip over to what the original games told us about William Afton, a creative robotics genius whose entire family story is defined by loss and tragedy at the hands of the killer robots he created. Baby kills Elizabeth, Fredbear kills David, and Michael is then killed by the fun times. We also have the mysterious and absent Mrs. Afton, who we've theorized about in the past being represented by Ballora, the musical ballerina from Sister Location, mostly because of the song she sings.
Why do you hide inside your walls when there is music in my halls? All I see is an empty room, no more joy, an empty tomb.
Again, doesn't that sound familiar? Almost like it's exactly how M1 Fiona feels. Her husband locked away inside his walls, trying to work on projects, not spending any time with her.
I miss you.
All with the room of their dead child laying empty, waiting to be filled by M2. But wait, there's more! There's the old house on the hill with a secret underground
But wait, there's more!
workshop, the Murray house above MCM and the Afton house above Sister Location. There's a robot designed to be a babysitter that essentially fails at their duty. Security Puppet was designed to protect Charlie, yet she dies, and M1 Fiona, who was designed to protect David, and yet he also dies on her watch. There's the burning down of a facility, but the main villain survives it. There's mysterious molten metal that works as a kind of power supply for the machines created, giving them life, as it were. You have the primary villains of the franchise, Afton and M1 Fiona, wanting to put their children back together, and there's then the wonderful and ever underutilized Baby, who gained sentience after the accidental death of William Afton's daughter Elizabeth. William then rejects her, banishing her to a secret underground lair he built beneath the house. A near beat for beat parallel of M2's story of rejection from Edwin. I could go.
You make a very good point, Tom. Like, their life parallel each other so much that coincidence? Maybe, but some people can say, I think not.
On, but I think you get the point. The number of times the stories from older games paralleled the stories of the Murray family cannot be purely coincidence. It's a pattern. They say history is doomed to repeat itself, but when it's this much, and when it involves as shady a company as Fazbear, you know there's something more going on. And that's
But the phrase, Tom, history is doomed to repeat itself. The previous phase is those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Right? Are doomed to repeat itself. Something like that.
thing is bigger than I could have ever imagined. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason these things all line up so perfectly is for one simple reason. The stories from the first 7 games, the ones that told us everything we knew about Henry, Charlie, William, Elizabeth, Michael, and David, are entirely made up. Now, to some degree, you knew this already. In my theory crafting livestream, I kept bringing up the idea that in Help Wanted, we are told point blank that the games were just that, games.
For total fabric
fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic.
The books corroborated this with stories like The Monty Within, where kids refer to Pizzeria Simulator as an in-universe game, where the mediocre melodies come from. But we also learned from Tape Girl that the whole indie dev story wasn't entirely truthful.
It's an elaborate cover-up to make light of what happened.
And so we basically used that line as a way to explain away some of the inconsistencies, but really the stories were just as we originally thought. However, since then, we've had a few more pieces of evidence that would seem to suggest they're not fictionalized versions of real events, they're just fiction. One of the earliest stories from Tales from the Pizzaplex is Help Wanted, and in it we learn about Steve Snodgrass, a developer that was hired by Fazbear to make the first 3 to 4 games to make light of the rumors of murder and death surrounding the business. But as he works on it, his mind begins to fall apart thanks to sound illusion discs. Not only did Fazbear never tell him what the story really was, he was working purely on rumors, he was also being driven insane. So how trustworthy is that? And in the Walmart exclusive Tales story Monster, yeah, we're going that deep here, we learn about a kid who writes stories about a pizzeria owner in the local paper, claiming that he is a serial killer and abuser, turning the whole town against him. In fact, the stories he whips up sound an awful lot like the FNAF 1 newspapers we see in the game. But throughout the story, we're told explicitly that these stories are completely fictional, fabrications made up by a kid with a grudge. And if that's the case, we're being shown that these FNAF 1 newspapers also can't be trusted. And with that in mind, it makes you question what else can be trusted. Of course, I'm not saying that absolutely everything is fake. If we have corroborating evidence, especially from the Steel Wool era of games, the ones that took that meta approach and revealed to us the real world that these games existed in, then we should be good to go. Like, we do know that William and Henry existed. They're mentioned in Secret of the Mimic audio and text logs. Likewise, a FNAF 6 location definitely existed because we find it underneath the Pizzaplex. And clearly, there was an incident or incidents that Fazbear wanted to cover up with a set of video games in the first place, as with—
So it's something similar to hiding a tree in the forests, in which there is a small bundle of truth, but it's being surrounded by lies or false or like just distorted truth, in which it's not necessarily lies, it's just half truth, half truth, half truth, half truth everywhere. And the actual truth can be covered, camouflage, I suppose.
Told about in Help Wanted. However, what I'm saying is what caused those events might now be something entirely different, because outside of those in-universe games, we don't really have any evidence for them, and so we can't rely on them as 100% true, or even rely on them happening as we saw them at all. And when you open up that can of worms, suddenly everything we thought we knew is thrown into question. Was William Afton actually a murderer, or just an awful business owner? Did Michael die and come back to life as a purple husk? Was anything ever really possessed by spirits to begin with? Maybe instead of a murdery business owner with a bunch of ghost children possessing animatronics, it was always just a rogue AI that Fazbear got their hands on, they couldn't control, and had a habit of stuffing people into suits that could also mimic the behavior and voices of children. I mean, Scott did say that was the kind of story he was more interested in telling.
I know there's a little bit of a divide with maybe me and the fan base. I have a tendency to lean sci-fi, even though I try to come back into the roots of the supernatural. So anything that involves possession of AI or possession of machines or circuitry, I love that sort of thing.
That would be an absolute PR nightmare. In fact, it would have been more than a nightmare. It would have been the PR apocalypse. Admitting to the world, oh yeah, our proprietary self-learning AI has absorbed the trauma of its creator, developed a violent streak, and has now started stuffing customers into animatronic suits. We don't know how to stop it, and we are liable for all of it. That would be the end of the company. But if you had a scapegoat, like
And not just the end of the company, it makes humans in general, like, they will question sentient AI. Right now, as we talk about it, right now in the year 2025, generative AI is already out there. We know the next one is going to be, the next Pandora box is going to be sentient AI, in which they believe that they are alive, they are human, they have a soul, and they are not a tool to be used by humans. It's going to make all humans distrust sentient AI. Gorgeous dog.
jerk boss who happened to die on the premises in one of their faulty spring-lock suits. So yeah, it was totally him. Our founder was secretly a monster. We all knew he was a jerk, but we didn't think he'd go this far. He did everything, but it's over now. The monster's gone. Case closed. And things like FNAF 6. Was it a gathering of ghosts, or was it a corporate cleanup? A recall, where Fazbear did what it could to contain their rogue AI, sending something like a recall signal, or a specific frequency or data packet that would force any machine running the Mimic program to be drawn to one location. And that famous speech, it isn't a heartfelt eulogy, it's Fazbear cementing Afton's role as the fictional villain, putting a final neat bow on their scapegoat, with the real fire probably just being a calculated attempt to destroy all the evidence of their rogue AI. And for a while, they probably thought they succeeded. And so they built the Pizzaplex on top of the old establishment, only to reintroduce the Mimic via some old circuit boards. William Afton, his family, their story was created to turn Fazbear's failure in stopping the mechanical mess they adopted into a spoopy ghost story. And not only did they rewrite Afton's history, but to be sure that people wouldn't trace it back to their acquisition of Murray's Costume Manor and Edwin's Mimic, they took parts of Edwin's story and planted it onto their founders. Fiona was a puppeteer, and so M1 was translated into a puppet created by Henry to protect his child. One of the most traumatic events of Edwin's life, the death of his son, became the death of Afton's son, the Bite of 83. The echoes of M1's Fiona's grief over her lack of connection with Edwin after the death of their son turned into a verse from a video game, A Ghost's Lament. One of M1's final messages...
Alright, look, okay, let's say everything is true about this, okay? There's one thing in which I know that is stopping sentient AI from being an actual physical robot. It is the amount of power consumption required. Unless, I don't know, you use a nuclear fusion battery or something like that, it is not feasible. The amount of wattage, the amount of energy required to keep it operational is huge, massive.
To Edwin,
It is me. I'm Fiona.
became the words screamed by another overarching and vengeful spirit. Even the words that Edwin actually spoke to M1 Fiona about M2, that it could never replace his real son, are now just the infamously confusing line we hear in a fictional show.
The baby isn't mine.
Fazbear may not have stolen Edwin's inventions, but they did steal his story, twisting it and removing all memory of Edwin and his contributions from the equation. His merits and faults split apart and grafted onto a scapegoat to keep it all in-house, while also absolving themselves of all wrongdoing. But while I think there is a lot of evidence to support this whole idea, from the parallels in the games, lines in the books, even Scott himself, there's just one issue that I cannot shake. It kinda sucks as an answer. It's basically turning around and telling us, yeah, the last 10 years of theorizing, it doesn't matter, start over. And that is just super disheartening for us fans who have spent all those years trying desperately to take small pieces of the puzzle and put them together in such a way that we create a cohesive story. We've spent 10 years building up our ideas of Afton, of Henry, of the crying child, only for this idea to essentially flush them down the drain. It's one of the reasons why some of the early reactions to Secret of the Mimic's lore were so angry and frustrated, because Secret of the Mimic's whole thing was revealing to all of us that we didn't really know the truth about what was going on, even though...
Oh yeah, I forgot to intro this video. This video, William is actually innocent. It's actually one of two videos at the end of Game Theory. FNAF, did Fazbear really steal everything? So I watched the original video, which is William is guilty. The second one is William is actually innocent. So do watch that other video first, then watch this video. I think this video, even Tom himself think that this sucks. It sucks. Sorry, it sucks.
We thought we did. It was revealing information we basically had no way of knowing until very recently, which is tough compared to the, quote, good old days, where even though solving FNAF was hard, it felt like the pieces were all there for us to use, rather than key information being withheld for the sake of a twist. And this theory would kind of just perpetuate that idea. It would also make theorizing incredibly challenging going forward, at least more than it already is. We can speculate about how some elements might fit together, as I've done a little bit today, but it's just that, speculation, because we don't have any sense of how much those old games can even be used as evidence. I'm sure a bunch of you out there hate this idea. Heck, I don't really like it either. We here at Theorist have been big proponents of Scott rebooting the franchise and its story for quite some time. This, however, wasn't what we meant. But there is some hope, because this, like every video, is a theory. And if Secret of the Mimic taught us anything, it's that we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle at this point. All we can do is interpret what we have as best we can, and that can be done in a couple of different ways, like we've done with today's theory. If this ending isn't up your Bonnie bowling alley, you can always go and check out the other ending for today's theory that is a little more on the keep everything canon side. At the end of the day, the important thing is that we are open-handed, be willing to explore all the avenues and work together, because that is how we solve this weird and wonderful franchise. And right now, I'm going to be doing just that by going live with John FNAF, Rytos, ID's Fantasy, Hyperdroid, and Dorco to talk about all of these interpretations and more. So come by, say hi, and in the meantime, remember, it's all just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching.
Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna watch the 2-hour plus talk back. It's gonna be a very long video. Sorry. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. Thank you. Subscribe. Bye-bye. Alright. Thank you so much. Subscribe. Subscribe.